Online all the time. The news delivered to you on WKHM.com. Local news delivered to you every day on News Talk 970 WKHM.
Good morning. I'm Greg O'Connor, 6 after the hour, and here's what's happening in the WKHM News Center. Follow up to a story we brought you yesterday, the first homicide of the year in the county. Jackson County Sheriff's Department has identified the victim as 31-year-old John D. Campbell. They say he was shot and killed Tuesday night at his home on Athena Drive in Parma Township. Investigators say it was not a random act. They believe he was a targeted victim. So far, no arrests have been made. Under Sheriff Chris Kuhl says investigators trying to piece together the information. If you have any information, call the Sheriff's Department, 768-7931, or Crime Stoppers, 483-7867. Charlie Langton at the Larry Nassar sentencing.
Larry Nassar had been employed at Michigan State University since the late 90s, but in 2014, MSU did an investigation into Nassar's alleged sexual misconduct. Attorney Mick Graywall is suing Nassar and MSU. He says that MSU did suspend Nassar for 3 months, but cleared him of any wrongdoing. Yet he was returned to work with restrictions and wasn't fired until September 2016. So, Mr. Graywall, were there victims during that time?
14 or 15 victims during that time period. All of them would have been prevented had Michigan State University followed their own internal protocols. They failed to do that.
MSU has denied they know of Nassar's abuse. Sentencing continues this week. Charlie Langton, Michigan News Network.
Two-time Olympic gymnastics champion Ellie Reisman, 23 years old, came forward in November 2017 with accusations of abuse against Nassar. She told WKHM this nightmare will be with her forever. And she felt bad for her teammate, Simone Biles, who just recently acknowledged she had been a Nassar victim.
It's not something that you suffer just in the moment. It carries on with you for the rest of your life. And even though I'm not there today, I still feel it. It's traumatizing. It's nerve-wracking. This interview right now, I feel like my hands are shaking. It's not something that's comfortable to talk about, but I'm determined to make sure the current and the future generations are safe. Sexual abuse or abuse is never, ever okay. And to have it happen to Simone is one of my best friends. And to see her write that about having to go back to the ranch, I mean, I hope USA Gymnastics listens, because they haven't listened to us so far. I hope they listen, and I hope they don't make any of the girls go back to the ranch. No one should have to go back there after, so many of us were abused there.
Reisman very critical of USA Gymnastics. She says they only care about money and their reputation.
I don't even have words. It's so disappointing. I mean, every single time they release a statement, it's basically the same thing, saying they care and they welcome to work with their athletes, but they don't mean it. If they really cared, the second they realized that we were abused, they would meet with us and ask us to help, because we're all more than willing to help. We want to create change. Their biggest priority from the beginning and still today is their reputation, the medals they win, and the money they make off of us. I don't think that they care. If they cared, then the second they realized that I was abused, they would have reached out, asked if I needed therapy, asked if I was okay, asked what they could have done, and they would have made a big change. Instead, they allowed Larry to continue to work on little girls in Michigan and molest gymnasts for a very long time.
Ellie called Nassar a master manipulator, and she was told to keep quiet.
Larry was such a master manipulator, and he was so good at brainwashing me and so many other people. And so the second that I realized it did happen to me, I told my mom, and then we told USA Gymnastics. And to me, it seemed like I was told to be quiet. And I think that when somebody in high power is telling you to be quiet, right when they realize you are abused, I think that is a threat.
Reisman called the situation horrible and needs to be fully investigated.
So many of my teammates and so many other girls that I don't know have been so brave to come forward and share their story. It's not something that any of us are excited and happy to share about. It's not something we want to think about. But USA Gymnastics is ignoring us. They're not creating change. So we have to share our stories and reiterate how traumatized we are, how horrible this is, in hopes they'll listen to us. We need an investigation to really get to the bottom of how many people looked the other way and didn't handle the abuse correctly. I wish I had all the answers, but I don't. I don't think that a lot of people do, but I want the answers, and I really hope there is an investigation going on right now, because it's unacceptable the way that they handled it from day one. Now I have trust issues because I trusted him. He was a doctor. You would never, ever imagine that a doctor would be hurting you. And I want people to know that, because when I say I didn't realize I was being abused, I never imagined that a doctor would ever be hurting me.
USA Olympic gymnastics champion Ellie Reisman, the sentencing hearing for Larry Nassar resuming this morning. So far, 50 victims have given impact statements, and there could be 50 more. MSU President Luana Simon was inside the courtroom on Tuesday, but she says she will not be back because she drew too much attention. ABC's Ryan Burrow, however, will be in the courtroom.
50 witness statements have been read, about half of the impact statements to be presented in the 4-day-long sentencing hearing, as gymnasts continue to describe the horror of being treated by Dr. Larry Nassar.
I still remember flinching from his touch. I hope you were never able to walk outside those walls as a free man.
Thomas Brennan is a coach, testifying that he sent more than 100 girls to Nassar.
So the guilt I feel for that is hard to fathom.
Brennan saying he once considered Dr. Nassar a mentor.
For the record, go to hell.
Ryan Burrow, ABC News.
In other news this morning, a U.S. Marine from Lapeer County has been stabbed to death at Camp Pendleton in California. 18-year-old private first class Ethan Barkley Weber-Paul died Tuesday in an encounter with another Marine at the School of Infantry. Barkley Weatherpaul's father made the announcement on his Facebook page. A judge has awarded $1 million to a Detroit man who spent 25 years in prison before proving that his mother's gun was not the murder weapon. Desmond Ricks is benefiting from a Michigan law that compensates people who were wrongly convicted. Tests last year showed that bullets recovered from the victim did not match the gun that was presented at trial in 1992. The 51-year-old Ricks was released from prison last May. Hundreds of Taco Bell employees across the state have joined a class action lawsuit claiming they were not paid for hours worked. The filing against Sundance Incorporated of Brighton, they operate about 75 Taco Bell stores. Megan Bonanni is the attorney who filed the suit.
In addition to money, which would be the wages owed, perhaps a doubling of those wages depending on certain court rulings, we're also seeking an order from the courts called equitable relief that these practices have to end and that these employees have to be paid in compliance with the various state and federal wage and hour laws that we have.
ABC's Alex Stone on the California torture case. The parents will be in court today.
Well, many neighbors around the Turpin family's most recent home say they never saw the children at their previous home about an hour and a half away. Neighbors like Mike Clifford say they saw very odd behavior through upstairs windows.
Late at night, almost every other night, just them marching in a single file line, room to room.
He says that single file marching would sometimes last until 3 a.m. He says the children would only come out in the evening in a single file line to get into a van, and then the family would return home the next night. When David and Louise Turpin walk into court here today, they'll be represented by public defenders. It'll be the first time they've been seen outside of jail since they were arrested. The two are accused of torturing their children for years. As a case against them is being built, police forensic teams have been at their house looking for evidence. Alex Stone, ABC News, Riverside, California.
Jackson Mayor Derek Dobies told WKHM he was surprised but not shocked that the city received a resignation letter from longtime treasurer Randy Rozak, who will step away from his position this Friday, essentially retiring.
Yesterday, our city clerk received a letter from Randy indicating that he was, stepping down from his post, resigning, and ultimately retiring at the end of this week, January 19th. So, I had to talk about, what to do with that. With that letter.
Have you talked to Randy?
I haven't been able to talk to Randy yet, no. We got that late in the afternoon, and then I had some meetings in the afternoon leading up to City Council with the Public Health Commission, some other board meetings, and then straight into Council. So I haven't been able to talk to him yet about, his timing and stuff like that. But
so it was Derek. It was a surprise, right?
Yeah, it was a surprise. The timing of it, it kind of seemed like with the house going up for sale and some it heard some rumors kind of kicking around City Hall, but obviously I think he's been there 35 years.
Long time,
longer than I've been alive.
Yeah.
He's been there quite a while, has a long history of public service, and retire on Friday, and I'm sure I'll be talking to him before then and find out more about what's next for him.
Council did discuss how they might fill the position.
It's a game plan.
Well, I think that Council kind of knocked around some options last night. We settled on having the Deputy City Treasurer kind of fill in the interim. I don't think that he lives in the city either, so we'll have to ultimately accept applications and launch a suit and do an appointment for the next city treasurer, who will be installed until the election in 2019.
Jackson Mayor Derek Dobies. Tough day for Governor Snyder. Two pieces of legislation he opposed adopted. The Senate voted unanimously to create a $5,000 tax break by increasing the personal income tax exemption, a little more than the governor wanted to spend. Then an override on a previous veto by the governor on the sales tax on the difference. This will give you a break if you're a new car buyer when you trade in your old car. Governor had vetoed that deal, but the Senate also voted to override the veto, as did the House. Response from the governor after lawmakers' first override of legislation that he had already vetoed, questioning how to budget for a quicker tax cut. In a statement, the governor said, quote, changing the tax code without a plan to pay for it challenges the conservative fiscal responsibility of the past 7 years. With the override, lawmakers found a route to speed up a law to let new car buyers be able to subtract the value of their trade-in from the sales price for greater tax benefits. That from the governor's office. A lot of agenda items as lawmakers heat back up in Lansing. State Rep Julie Calley, a Republican from Portland, has her focus on mental health.
Last year, the House assembled a task force to travel the state and learn more about current challenges in the mental health system. This is an issue that I am particularly passionate about. We know that there are not enough inpatient beds currently available. However, I don't believe adding a particular number of beds will fix the problem. Statewide, we are seeing systemic challenges which must change. In some cases, inpatient providers are keeping the patient longer than necessary. In other cases, the individual cannot be released to the community because the services needed at the local level are not ready. As usual, throwing money at the problem will not solve it. We need to work on efficiencies and effectiveness as well.
State Rep Julie Calley. The organization Oil and Water Don't Mix has laid out a detailed report on how government can decommission Enbridge Pipeline 5 without compromising Michigan's energy needs. Liz Kirkwood.
First, the Attorney General or Governor should immediately file a legal action against Enbridge to enforce ongoing violations of the easement agreement. Second, Governor Snyder should direct the Michigan Public Service Commission to examine alternatives to provide propane to the Upper Peninsula. Third, Governor Snyder should direct the MPSC to examine alternatives for transport of light crude oil produced in northern Michigan.
Some DTE customers showed up at a hearing in Lansing recently. It was the House Energy Committee, furious about their smart meters.
Some consumers describe DTE's conduct on the smart meters as, quote, malicious, aggressive, unfair, terrorists, and monsters. Dan Schulte was one of those using the monster word.
You called them monsters.
What do you think?
Well, I'm asking you.
Well, they are.
Well, that's a pretty strong term.
It's pretty strong what they're doing. They're out of line, and they know they're out of line, and there's no one holding them accountable.
The utility says it's doing the best job it can on smart meters and will have a full report to a House committee later this month. Reporting from the state capitol, Tim Skubic, the Michigan News Network.
This day in history, Daniel Webster, Cary Grant, Kevin Costner, Oliver Hardy were born on January 18. 1948, Ted Mack's original Amateur Hour comes to TV, and it lasted 22 years. 1973, Pink Floyd begins recording Dark Side of the Moon. 1975, The Jeffersons debut on CBS TV. And remembering we throw nothing away here, 1939, on this day, Louis Armstrong recorded Jeepers Creepers.
I don't care how the weather vane points, when the weather vane points too gloomy. It's got to be Sunday to me, when your eyes look into mine. Oh, Jeepers Creepers, where'd you get those creepers? Jeepers Creepers, where'd you get those eyes? Oh, gosh, all get up, got to get those lips up. Gosh, all get up, got to get that dial.